I never thought I'd burn out, but I did. My guiding light is, trust yourself, trust your gut, definitely know what you value, and let that never sacrifice what's important to you.
Welcome to another episode of Talk to the Fedora, chatting about hard-hitting, honest entrepreneur wisdom that you can use to grow your small business. My name is Jared Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events, and today we're very pleased to be welcomed by Tuan Nguyen. Tuan is one of the first things you notice about him is he asks excellent questions. For example, on his LinkedIn profile, he asks, what is the common thread between growing a business to about 150 staff and all of his extensive volunteer efforts? It's stories that touch, move, and inspire people. Some of his key values that he lives by: he parties like a rock star, from exclusive parties to yacht parties and everything in between. He donates millions to charities through his business ventures and charitable initiatives. He builds ventures to over 100 team members, generates millions in revenue. He builds communities of like-minded individuals. And Tuan is also a successful leadership and life coach, coaching hundreds of people to be the best versions of themselves. Tuan has delivered over 400 speeches globally in front of hundreds of thousands of audiences, including 3 TEDxTalks. Tuan is deeply passionate about philanthropy and stories, the personal brand, and how it is core to leadership and mobilizing people in the masses. Tuan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jared. Wow. Thanks for reading that bio. That's so kind of you.
I really appreciate the time to be here, Tuan. So let's start off by, where are you calling in from, please?
This is my home office in Ottawa, Canada. I have another home office in Toronto, but I'm here this week, and yeah, in my basement, and yeah, I love it. I love it here.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tuan. So as one of the questions you chatted about earlier is, in relation to your background, what would you suggest would resonate with your story the most? Who would appreciate your story?
Thank you for asking me this question, dude. I have, as you know, I love this question. It's one of my favorite questions. And yeah, I think the people who would resonate with me are the people who kind of grew up from nothing, who grew up as overachievers, who grew up always pleasing people, but really felt something deep inside that they're meant to make a difference. Right. I think if you're this person and honestly, here's something crazy, who is a creative, right? Who's inspired by the human connection, the human experience, right? Versus inspired by just a cool gadget, right? It's the story behind the cool gadget. If you're this kind of a creative type person, then I think, my story probably is related to you. Of course, me being a visible minority, being whoever's a dad, who's a conscious father, who wants to be the best person they can be for their parents, who believes that life is a journey of self-discovery, then this is the background of my story, right? So,
well, Tuan, I know you have quite an original story. Would you care to share some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll position it as, my story in relation to how I became an entrepreneur.
That'd be great.
And so to work backwards, for me, I would say my driving superpower, if you want to call it that, for business, is that I've always wanted to support people. I want to help people. And the other thing is, I never thought I'd ever be an entrepreneur, even at a young age. I'm in my late 40s now.
When you were younger?
Yeah, I'm in my late 40s now, but I was an entrepreneur at 19.
Yeah.
And so let's go all the way back to the beginning, and just picking out the key points that I think is important for my friends and some of the audience to know, is that I came from Vietnam. I left during the change of the guards in '75 by boat, and my mom at one point thought I was not alive. She didn't feel me move, and so then my life was just through the grace of divine power was saved, because a U.S. carrier was just around the corner and picked the people in our boat up, and I was shot back to life. Now, fast forward, I grew up with a heart condition, and always feeling grateful to medical system, to alternative healthcare even, and to our government. Both the American and the Canadian government were very, very supportive. And so just that very little story I just shared I felt I was born with purpose. Like when you're given all these stories about, you should be dead, right? Suddenly you're given purpose in this story. So I've always felt this weird sense of purpose. And because of being grateful to actually be alive with you to today, I'm always trying to give back to the community that saved my life, right, and saved my family. So it started with this desire to be of service to people.
Yeah.
And because I'm a creative and I'm a human, a guy who loves human expression, like I was completely inspired by Michael Jackson when I saw him do that moonwalk in the early. In fact, I was gonna put my fedora on,
Ah,
but my daughter took it, and but I was gonna slap on my MJ fedora.
oh, I'm always encouraging people to wear hats.
Yeah. It's funny. I even my Jabberwocky's dance head is even down here, but I really want to kind of dive into the show with you and the team and the audience here. But that sense of purpose, that desire to give back, and at the same time, the desire to want people to feel great,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That is the basis of, I think, how I run everything in my life, from businesses to building teams. And so I didn't know that over the years, volunteering, pursuing medical school, all these things that I was accomplishing over the years. And by the way, along the way, I faced a lot of hardship, from racism to being bullied in all these different ways, right? And for every one person that bullied me, there's another person of the same culture even that helped me, right? So
right,
I felt very supported despite having some of the challenges that I faced, at least growing
right,
up. But this act of really being supportive and help people create amazing experiences, right? I didn't realize it would lead to a leadership style. And that leadership style is my style. At the end of the day, is I like to inspire people, bring people together, mobilize them to do things with a common goal, and then helping people be the best version of themselves.
right,
All this came together, and it is like the foundation to all the little ventures I've done. Where it would take probably like 2-3 hours to go through all the little ventures I've done. So I'll just highlight some of, like, a few of them. First, my first business was a window cleaning business. It was a student franchise called Action Window Cleaning,
right.
and I didn't know anything about business, and I crushed it with business because of sheer curiosity and the desire to serve and help people feel great. Right, that was the bug for entrepreneurship for me. But
And
I
how old
still
were you at
did.
that time?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
How old were you when you launched that first business?
19, like 18 going to 19.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But I still didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I had got the bug, but I was in accounting, I was in engineering, then accounting. And I just thought I need like 20 years experience to run a real business, you know? So I thought I'd be a partner at a firm, which at the time I worked for Welch, which is here in Ottawa. But little did I know that some projects and playing with the internet and meeting people, I would end up joining two other friends and growing Canada's largest online directory at that time, called Canadian Kiosk. Ottawa is known for Ottawa Kiosk.
yeah.
But
I remember Canadian Kiosk. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that was really often mostly run more by Craig and Stephen, my partners, because I felt my passion was in healthcare and events, like you.
yeah,
So I ran the Health Genie directory, and I ran the Canada Conventions portal, where it was anything to do with conventions, right? So,
right.
like you would have been on this list, for example, nationwide. So I grew those portals, and then we ended up licensing the software, which now it's called SaaS. It wasn't called SaaS back in the day, right? So we licensed the software too, and we
Mhm.
had some really cool growth strategies to grow our business through this SaaS approach. And then we sold it in 2011. Right. And then after that, got married, got divorced. And for those who've dealt with depression, I could relate, because I felt completely depressed in 2012 and a half, 2013 ish. And that divorce led me into what I do today. And what I do today is basically leverage my strength in digital marketing and support people in growing online communities through content, and helping them build sort of evergreen, not so evergreen. I don't believe in passive income fully. You always have to put a bit of effort, but it is a lot less effort. It's scalable effort, as I call it, where
Sure.
for every 1 ounce of effort you put out, you make 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more, whatever that unit of dollar is.
Tuan, so often we talk about a person who's launched a business, successful or otherwise with the challenges they face. We could get to that later. But I've rarely come across somebody like you who every part of your life has been about helping others, either through philanthropy or mentorship or just helping to them connect with others to grow their own enterprises. That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank
really
you.
nice to see.
Yeah, thank you. And so I want to tie in the community and volunteerism and all that at this point, because as you know, one of my TEDx talk is about volunteerism. Volunteerism has been kind of like the only one consistent thing in my life since the beginning. Whether I'm an entrepreneur or employee, volunteerism is always in my life, right?
Right,
And
right.
so um, I put out this post about being depressed, and I'm not a guy who's trying to build a social following. I just was for my friends and family. But this one post took off, and it literally went viral, and influencers, thought leaders, and media picked it up. And that's when I learned about this thing called lifestyle entrepreneurship. And just, my whole life has been a lifestyle entrepreneurship. I have been able to work and build money through the internet that allow me to let you see the world. So I feel I've been very lucky, but it's sort of an in thing now. It's a bit of a trend to be a lifestyle entrepreneur. But that's what I really am. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur. And what that means to me is I determine what my life looks like. And my business is a subset of that lifestyle. And
Right.
my business sort of finances and gives me that lifestyle. And I've decided the most valuable thing for me is first self-care, because to go back, I discovered I have a heart condition since I was born with it. So, I have health challenges that most people don't see. And so self-care is really important. And of course, being a dad is very important for me. And then spending time with my loved ones, right? And the last thing is making sure I get to be the best version of me. So the best version of me
Fun.
is being creative.
Did you have a mentor growing up, or was this all by trial and error? Did you learn all of this?
Um, so I would say my first mentor was in grade 6, which is this guy named Mr. Gardner. And he saw that I was a science dude, but I was more creative. So I think he fostered that. Then it wasn't until university where I met the late Max Keeping. And for those who are not in Ottawa, he's, I'd say one of Ottawa's best philanthropists, former vice president of CTV, which is like the NBC of Canada. And then a couple professors, Professor Koppel and Professor Normand Fortier. These are two guys who mentored me. And then Dave Reddy, who's also an amazing guy. You guys could Google him. He's another amazing philanthropist, guy who worked nonprofit. And then a whole bunch of business mentors. Like I had a lot of mentors. I tell people you should have like 100 mentors, and it doesn't mean you talk to them every day. Once a year is even good. Once every 2 years is even fine. And some people you could talk weekly. But I would say, great question, Jared. By the way, mentors is really a major reason why I would say I am right here in front of you with my stories.
The odd time that you and I talked, Juan, like just now, you changed the way I do my podcast. It's just from a 4-minute intro before we even began today. So thank you. Fabulous.
No problem. I mean, I like to digress all over. So, content is usually, people say is king, but content is not king. Resonance is king. Content is abundant. What I'm sharing in this story, and if you ask me about like tips and shit and stuff like that, branding tips and everything, what I'm going to share, you've all heard before, but I'm sharing it from my story, my perspective. It's the same friggin' tip, but hopefully it'll resonate with a certain audience.
Right.
So resonance is king and not content.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, because a lot of times people read entrepreneur books, branding, Steve Jobs, all that stuff, but until they could put it into context or hear how it's influenced other people's lives, then something might click.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Excellent. I mean, there's no doubt you collaborate, you give back to the community, you bring people together. What does the concept of collaboration mean to you, Tuan?
Collaboration for me is just alignment. One word, it's alignment.
Right.
And depending on the type of, I guess, goal in a way that you hope to align with, but that's the driver of that, right? So when I'm playing sports, it's a different alignment. When I'm with my children, and I'm trying to connect with other parents who want to be involved with their children, right? You'll notice that I don't hang out with parents that aren't involved with their children. If they're working their business 24 hours a day, I don't see them. I love them, but I don't see them. right? So it's all about alignment. And so when I go to a networking event, I try to dive deep and try to find alignment with people. And if not, I send them love. I wish them all the best, and I'm pretty open and honest. Like, hey, dude, looks like I don't know if I could work with you because we're on different paths, but I wish you all the best.
Yeah. Something you talked about, like with Health Genie and how you created your businesses, is you have a lifestyle that you want to live. Spend time with your family and travel and all this, and you created or managed your businesses around that. A lot of the times I find it's reverse. People start a business so that they can do XYZ things, but you created your lifestyle first and then revolved your life around it.
Yes, yeah. I don't think it's easy to do with most businesses, but my line of work allows that for me, right? So I'm lucky. If you run a restaurant, you can't just say, I'm gonna work at 2 a.m. because that's when I want to work. It's so I do have a bit of a luxury based on my field of work, right? But I still think people should bake in their calendar things that are really important to them and surround themselves with people who share that value, because in 10 years, you'll realize that you should have put time into what mattered to you, right? And you let it go, and then you're riddled with guilt and shame, and then somehow you just come to peace with it and let it go, right? But at the end of the day, I think if you could bake in what's really important to you, you won't regret it. Right.
I think that's a brilliant piece of advice. A lot of the times we hear, oh, they're in the government or they have the day job. Oh, I'll finish what I'm doing and then I'll focus when I retire on what I want to do.
Right.
But by then, it might be too late.
Yeah.
The health, the time commitments are very different.
Exactly. So I'm not the type of entrepreneur that says, if you're in a job, that means you're screwing yourself, and that you're not the best version of you. I think a self-discovery doesn't require all day as an entrepreneur, right? Like at the end of the day, even entrepreneur, you're giving yourself a job, but the inner process is different, right? You could do it as an employee. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the small businesses that are listening or watching today, Tuan, many of them they've been told they need to network, they need to get out, they have to create a market, they have to collaborate, all this stuff. What does the process of networking mean for you?
Yeah, so we talked about this before the recording, right? It's changed. In the past, I would attend every single event in the city. Also, because even though I consider myself an introvert, I know the value of meeting people and learning how to connect with people, right? So first, from a personal perspective, I think it's a journey that you get to grow as a person. I think people forget that, right? That as an entrepreneur or you're running and you need to meet people, I would say try not to think about needing to meet people to grow your business. Try to understand that this process is a process that's going to help you grow as a person, right? And so that's number one, because I'm the kind of guy that wasn't like the full networking type back in the day, but then I love it now. I find joy in it, and but I'm excited to be home and chill in this room. As I love this room, I read in here and I read in the laundry room, but I love the space, right? And I recharge like this. But yeah. So in the past, I still encourage people to go to events and meet people and come up with a repertoire of questions. Right? I love coming with curious questions and I could give you a bit of a tip on that in a little bit in terms of how do you structure questions.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
And at least how it works for me. But now what I've learned in networking is I think there's something even more powerful, is that I used to go to events, and of course there's people who you don't jive with. Some people you just like get triggered by, even like I'm being straight here, like I'm not gonna lie and sugarcoat. But then some people you really get along and you're like, man, I wish I could meet a lot of these people. Like if I could meet like all these good people, then my business would be like booming, right? Things like that, right? Like all that alignment. So the process of figuring it out and aligning and finding the right people, that's really cool, right? But now my networking tip part of my networking tip is step one is really discover who your voice is, what your voice is, who you are. The internet has given you an opportunity to present yourself and attract like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now what I think has been amazing is that I jumped on LinkedIn for the first time in 10, 11 years. For me, it was a glorified Rolodex back in the day. And I didn't really like LinkedIn, but I took a challenge on from a friend of mine, and I went 30 days straight. And all I did was share what was on my mind. And I shared what I thought was valuable for me, what I would love my kids to learn. And through that alone, I'm not kidding you. I don't want to drop who has reached out. Like, I've been shocked. I remember I screenshot a few of them, like, yo, look who just added to me. We're talking like, you know, let's take Nestle. It's not Nestle, by the way, because I don't want to use the actual name of the company, but the global brand VP of Nestle, that size company added me. And it's because it was around fatherhood and about how important it is to be vulnerable as a man, right? And so I think what's a really powerful way to network on top of going out to meet people, because that's a skill that I think is really powerful, right? Especially for business owners, but to not be afraid to just show who you are, right? And in networking back in the day, I would always like have imposter syndrome. I have self-doubt. I don't know if this person liked me. I hear this person is really successful and I didn't jive with that person. Oh my gosh. And then now all of his or her networks and I think I'm an idiot. Like, you go through this like crazy mental, like, journey when you go out to network people. And
Well, it
everyone
sounds
has,
like being authentic. Like, if you believe in so and so, this is who you are. Like, I think I agree. A lot of people try to put on a persona when they leave the house. I mean, you mentioned yourself that you're introverted. How did you start getting out of your shell? Well, first you left the house. Great. That's the first step.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love people, but it wasn't about, I wasn't a fan of big groups. That's what people don't realize. Like, Tuan, you're so social, it's so fun. I'm like, yeah, it's like 5 of us, like it's a blast. But like when you're walking a room and there's like 300-400 people, it's like, I just want to go home, but I made my mistakes. I would stand in the back. I was I thought I was being nice and courteous, and I watched people just step in front of me and just start networking, and it looks like they were walking away with some valuable, relationships. And I actually just tried to find people that resonate with my style the most. I would look at someone and say, oh, that person isn't like the smooth talking. And I'm not saying these people are bad people, but I'm not a smooth talker, right? I'm like, hey, what's up? It's like, hey, Ricky, let me tell you something. Like, I'm not like that, right? Like, so I'm not like super sales guy. And again, I value being a salesperson because I consider myself a salesperson. So I just found people that resonated with the style that I would like to emulate. Right. And again, it started with me observing people and almost having a semi-scientific, but with intuition approach. So I would say if you're out there and you're new to it, first, it's okay to be scared or fearful, and you could go to 2-3 events and feel you haven't done anything. But I would encourage, just observe people, right? And find that friendly face and be open and say, I'm actually new to this and I don't know what I'm doing, but you seem like a really nice person. What's your trick? What's the one thing? So, by the way, that's my tip of the day. Is there's a style called appreciative inquiry, and you ask open-ended questions that gets people to dive into their hearts, right? So instead of saying, how's your trip to Greece, you ask almost like an urgent, it creates an urgency connection to the heart. So if I had one day in Greece, I can't go for 2 weeks, but if I had one day in Greece, where would I eat? What would I see, in one day? And what it gets the person to do is to go from the head and really dive into the heart and connect with their trip and draw out their favorite moments, right? And so in the beginning, I would meet people who worked at accounting firms, and most people say, so what does this company do? And what do you do? And it's this, and my question was always different. Is this what you've always wanted to do? And what was the point where you pivoted? Like, what was it? Or tell me the one reason you decide to not, like, what were your 3 options other than becoming a CPA? And what's the most important reason why you chose to be a CPA?
Oh, one of the questions I like to ask is, what do you love about your business, your career, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so
And,
I would even go deeper,
yeah,
right? I say, I see you're really passionate about your business, so that's amazing, right? And what part of you makes you the perfect fit for the business you're running now?
hmm,
Right? And then I would tell people it's my desire to help people, my desire to be of service and create a human experience. It's
sure,
why it's led me to be more of a content marketer than, even though I'm analytical, I could do growth marketing, I could do every type of marketing, you know, well enough. I always say I'm competent in all areas of marketing, but the reason I do my business is because my superpower is service and the human experience.
yeah.
All right. And that's
But
it.
come on, it wasn't always this way. Like, from my understanding, is you said, and I did the same thing. I call it like a networking rookie mistake. When you're first starting out, you feel like you need to press the flesh, meet everybody in the room, get everybody's business card,
Yeah.
go to every single event under the sun
Yeah.
to create something. When did that start to change for you?
Um, so I, so great question, by the way. It wasn't in business that it started. I mentioned, volunteerism's always been, a source for me. And even though I ran a business as a window cleaner at 19, it
Yeah.
was Dave Reddy that shared a really big life lesson for me, because he's the one that says, Tuan, you'd be a great entrepreneur. I'm like, what are you talking about, right? And he says, I've watched you motivate people with no money. Like you're motivating volunteers and spending countless hours doing volunteer work, right? I've seen you in a room talking to people and squeezing donations out of people, right? Like I've seen all this. And I'm like, well, because, I want to help the charities, right? And so what was it? It was really, I was always trying to maximize my volunteer efforts, the impact of my volunteer efforts. I didn't know that by volunteering and with the idea of maximizing, like some people just go volunteer, log in their hours. Great. That's okay. I'm grateful for that. But I
Sure.
went in and said, I only have 10 hours a week to volunteer. How do I get more out of that 10 hours? It's just like that. That's just who I am. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get 10 people to help me during the 10 hours, like then I got 100 hours now, right? Like I would think of all these things. Oh, I'm emailing everyone at the same time. So let's do an email list, right?
Right.
Like, so I started like creating all these solutions in a way, I guess, problem solving. And I didn't realize it until Dave Reddy pointed it out to me, right? And so it wasn't a pivotal point where I went from like not uh going like not um like in business, at least it was really the act of wanting to accomplish more and learning, seeing who is accomplishing more. Like, as you can tell, I don't have any of the answers myself. It literally was just always looking people who are doing things the way I want to do things, and I just try to either contact them, talk to them, or reverse engineer in my head and through
Right.
observation. And I just try. I literally try. And when I have a bit of a goal, because I used to love setting goals to like go after the goal. I do have a different perspective on goals now, though. But that's how it started, was setting a goal and that I'm passionate about. And that back in those days was, I raised 10,000 last week. How do I raise 20,000 this week? All right. How do I get to $1 million now for charity? Right. And then I never thought this was a business. I never thought it was entrepreneurial. I'm serious. It's kind of weird to say that now, but I was just a 20-year-old kid trying to volunteer and raise money and create a movement. All right.
Right,
So,
right. I mean, that takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. I mean, at least initially, you're creating something out of nothing
yeah.
for the most part. And you talked about creating goals. You want to double the revenue from last month to this month. Okay, great.
Yeah.
How does one go about doing that? Just having a mind frame, is that enough?
In terms of setting goals.
Yeah, like setting goals. Like, I'm also thinking of the time management angle as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do funny, like I could even, if I were to screen share, like a message came into me, what she wrote was, I can't wait for our goal setting workshop. I do goal setting workshop, to plan your best year ever. And I might actually announce it as a public thing, but it's more for a private group of people. And I do
Sure.
it like every year. So there is a process, and I have a different process, or I have my own process of goal setting. And it actually starts with self reflection, bringing down your values, right? And then from there, you create your different goals. From a business perspective, it's a little bit different, you know. Let's talk pure business. We'll just talk pure business in terms of goal setting. The first thing is first I do, what is my business and what's my business model, right? How do I generate revenue? Right? Is it members? Is it you know, subscription? Is it selling as many of these products as possible? What's the margin on those products? You know, how many products do I sell? What's the best product suite? You know, which one sells me the most money? Like whatever that business model is, right?
Yeah.
Then the goal is, you know, is to set a revenue and impact. I always do, you know, income and impact perspective. Like how are you making a difference in your customers? And how much money are you making in making that difference in your customers' lives, right? And so, and then we set a goal based on your business model. You know, if your business model can't equal $1 million in a relatively realistic but unrealistic way, then that goes maybe is a bit outlandish, right? Because it depends on your time. I only work, you know, 4 hours a day, 4 or 5 hours a day when I have my son. Then I pound through about 10, 12 hours a day when I don't have my son. Right. And I don't ever sit straight, by the way. I'm always moving. That's why you see me moving a lot. And I could do this is a stand-up desk, so I could stand up and talk to you. But that's how I would set in terms of business goals. Right. But my goal setting includes everything. It's like, how much time do you want to put towards your business? Right. And during busy moments, how much more do you want to stretch that? Right.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Tuan, about you have your lifestyle and you structure your businesses, your philanthropic initiatives around it.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, I've been to the events here. We have people who are like realtors, and we have people who are, you know, and you have a basis of how people have grown in your business. If you are a complete new, what we call category of business, then you're like the leader. You get to create that revenue, you know, model and expectation growth in your own way. That's what we call disruption, right? And category creation, right? But I think most people are in a business that exists, right? And so there's a model there. As you can see, I'm a lazy as, you know, elf. As these days, I'm lazy as elf. I've been saying, you know, and I just I'm all about efficiency. Like, why rethink about all these things when really the hardest part about any game is the dialogue in your head, your physical health. Like that's what's going to really stop you, your brain. We think so. You might as well, get as many answers as possible that's already out there, so you don't have to rethink it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Tuan,
mine
what
was
about
easy.
the people who are launching a business or have been in business for a while, for small business in particular? I would think they would say yes to everything. Hey, can you sit on this board? Can you help me with this? Does your business do this, that, the other thing? Yes, yes, yes. Have you gotten to the point where you say no? And how would you recommend people start portioning off their time?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if once you do a proper goal setting from personal as well as business, you know, that's your guiding light. You know, you need to say, I've been invited to 10 things this week. I could focus on 5 things this week. I need to decide what's going to move the needle the furthest and be selfish in a way, in that way, because selfishness is going to lead to your personal success and health. Right. And that's when you really get to give back to people. All right. So, and it's a journey for all of us. Like at 32, I burnt as in Chris. I was on like 10 boards, and it was my lesson. Like eventually I never thought I'd burn out, you know, but I did. And our late Max Keeping told me to get off of everything and say no to everything. So then I said no out of survival to start, which I think a lot of people start is no out of survival. But then they start saying, you know what? I know what's important to me, and there's no way I'm going to sacrifice this with a yes. Right. And so I'm never going to sacrifice time with my son. And I put my phone down and away, and I don't know where it is. So many times I ask him, have you seen my phone? Like people know that I don't know where my phone is because I've made it a habit to not know where it is. Right.
So you're not tied to your phone. It's
Yeah. In fact, I have no social media on this phone. Right. Nothing. This is the phone that we text back and forth. And the other phone, which again, it's not even near me, the other phone is my social media phone. right? And that has no SIM card. I need Wi-Fi to access social media, right? And so every day I have this, and it's so great. I can't even get curious on what's on Facebook and Twitter and all that.
But that
So
also keeps you focused and separated. Like if you're going for a walk in the forest or with your kids, you're actually engaged with them
yeah.
rather than, checking Instagram or whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on a note, again, what I love is, I mean, I don't know how many people will make it this far because, I know YouTube, and so hopefully people make it this far. Is I've helped people grow to millions of subs on social media and everything, and I see people on LinkedIn and putting content and telling how great their life is. The reality is, I think you said this in Carla's interview with Carla, right? Is like we're always working. Like even lifestyle entrepreneurs like me, I'm always working, but I get to work on things that I like. Like I'm
Yeah.
busy as elf with my kids. I'm working, but it's like amazing. I'm constantly thinking how to make learning fun, right? And I'm always working on my business. I'm always working. So, I
But that's a
see.
big differentiator, working on the business.
Yeah, you're right.
Glad you
Yeah,
mentioned
instead
it.
of working in, working on, like that's also kind of like jumping in a shower. I say everything you do, like even like when to say yes, when to say no. We all have our own limits. That's why I tell people no matter what, it's like jumping in the shower. You adjust the hot and cold until it's right for you. Then
Mhm.
I have the lady wifey has gone in the shower. I come home. She's done her shower. I'm like, yeah, babe, just leave the water on. I walk in like bang. I was like, holy cow, like what's up with this? Like, and then me, like my showers are much, much cooler. So, if she walks in, she's like, oh my gosh, you got to turn up the heat here. I'm like, oh, I like it cool. Like it's good for, like I get used to it. Right. And so everyone has their own temperature. Everyone has their own limits. So I never give like outright direct advice, but my guiding light is, trust yourself, trust your gut, definitely know what you value, and let that never sacrifice what's important to you, right?
It's really
And if you
important. Yeah.
do, it's because it's like a short term, but that's a trap too. That's another black hole. It's like, oh, just for a little bit, I'll work extra at night for an hour, and I'll spend an extra hour less with my kids, like or maybe I won't see my lady for an hour, and what I mean, whatever it may be, right? I would say like do your best not to sacrifice what's important to you,
Yeah.
right?
I
And you
mean,
won't
the
regret it.
whole idea of the philanthropy, the health and wellness, the family side. How do you disassociate yourself? Like, does your mind just turn off like this? Like, how do you relax, Tuan? How do you turn off the business side for a while?
Yeah, I mean, first, it's not easy, right? It's
Mm.
I'll say it's not easy, but if you are intentional with your time, right? And like I look forward to shutting down, and I look forward because what's next is equally exciting. Like I think that's the beauty. So many people they work and they're tired, and then what they try to do is numb the stress and numb the pain, and that is there then that becomes like a drug, right? We numb ourselves with TV. I love watching my Netflix and I love watching my shows. I look forward to it. But my intention towards is not to numb pain. It's like, oh, I can't wait to see what the storyline is like. I'm excited about the story, right? And I use that energy to do the next activity. Do you know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
typically I talk with whoever, like my kids, whatever show, is we reflect on what we just saw. It becomes a way to connect, right? Versus like watching and then passing out, or going to do the dishes after, like, oh, I got to now make the dinner for the kids. Oh, I got to go to play volleyball with my friends, right? Like, it's very different the way you approach things, and so I try to do my best to align things that always excites me, right, including rest, right? And I'm excited to rest because I know what it means to sleep well. I know how it is to wake up and jump in the shower, and like I just I create this excitement every day, and so some people say do gratitude journals. Like, you have your own way. Whatever your way is going to be is your way. For me, I love waking up to Latin music. I love Latin hip hop, and it gets me going all the time. Like all the time, it gets me going. I even sent my daughter a message last night. I'm so grateful that you shared me this song. Gets me going all the time, right?
Uh,
And So there you go.
Okay, I used to play in a Latin band when I was living in Edmonton. A lot of fun.
Nice.
Oh, I loved it every Friday, Saturday night. But Tuan, you said that fun, that engagement. How has that changed during COVID for entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Do you care to share some thoughts about how COVID has affected small business?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most it had a stressful impact on the business. For some, like digital people, have grown quite a fair bit, especially in my space, in particular in the content digital marketing side and digital products and coaching and all that stuff. And I don't even offer coaching publicly. Like, it's funny, it's in my description, but people like, you coach? I'm like, yeah, but I don't talk about it, right? I let the universe, align that for me. Right. But I think COVID was really tough on people. And, but it was also an awakening call for a lot of us, like a wake up call for many of us. And I saw people just, making some really big decisions about their lives. Right. So I'm hoping that instead of kind of talking about how COVID impacted and focusing on that, I'm hoping that this moment forward, what you are creating, what you are attracting, the results of COVID, and some people are still living in anger from it, for example, right? And was I angry about it? Yeah, for sure. I was triggered a lot throughout COVID, but I surrounded myself with people who says, dude, sucks, but this is what I'm going to work on. This is how I'm going to pivot. Like yourself, dude, like I should reverse interview you sometime for my little my private group. It'd be really cool to get your perspective on pivots.
Well,
Right?
I could talk about it for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
As a
please.
full-time musician and a full-time in-event planner, my my life was done. I had no choice. Like, the two of the hardest hit industries. And I realized the day COVID hit, I could sit and cry in my pillow every night, wait for government handouts and wait for life to get back to normal. Or I'm going to put my entrepreneur hat on and going to do something about it. And we could talk a bit more about it later offline, perhaps, Tuan, but what were people looking for? This is what I approached. At the time COVID hit, in no particular order: toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and an alternative to Zoom. That's what I focused on. Business was great. So I thought to myself, yeah, if people are waiting for things to get back to normal, they might be very disappointed. Versus approaching it like, hey, this is a fun challenge. Things are going to be changing. Okay, let's go with the flow and do something different and see how we could change lives.
Yeah, what I love about your pivot is that, you not stayed, but you leverage your knowledge, your expertise in a particular part of living, right? And life and business and industry. And at the end of the day, you're not about events and music, you're about creating connections, right? So you're able to, leverage the core of you, which is connections, memories, experience. And you're like, that's what people look for, right? And so you stayed with that. And that's what I would say, people who, how did COVID impact people? It I hope it, and if you haven't reflected on that, is taking that time to know that underneath, the surface, which is your business, is something actually a little bit deeper, and call it a mission, call it whatever you want to call it, right? And, my friend who was a chiropractor is no longer a chiropractor, but he's still doing things that help people with health and happiness, but in his own way. He realized that the reason his business did really well was his energy, was his positivity, was his approach to life, and his ability to connect someone's limiting dialogue with their health, with their limited health. Like, that was what we noticed, right? And it wasn't about chiropractic treatment, right? So it was really cool to see him pivot as well. But what's important, I think, now is we are in charge of our own narrative, and I hope that people are building a narrative where that pandemic period was the trampoline, the launch pad to something great, right? And it doesn't have to be like world changing, but great for you as a person, right?
Sure.
That's what I hope would come out of it for most people.
Well, continuing on the line of things bouncing back like a trampoline, I love it. Would you care to reflect on some of the successes that you've had? Like, what are some of the successes of your much storied background that you're most proud of? Does any come to mind?
Yeah, I guess it's so funny because You might have read this before, but my saying's that no failure can define me and no success can define me either. I'm more than all of that. So I built the ability to detach myself from all these things. So I'm going to share a couple of successes, but they're not as meaningful as you may think to me. And because I don't want people to think about achievements. That's what I would encourage, is not to think about achievements, because then you're going to think about failures,
Oh,
right?
so people don't identify you as oh, you're the person who did so and so or didn't do so and so.
Yeah, but what they would do is they would kind of reflect into their own and like, I need to achieve this, this, and this.
Oh,
But anyone who focuses on achievements ends up focusing on failures too. Like, they do both. There is a mindset journey from failure to success. I get it, right? But with my children and myself, we focus on success and healthy habits, and we apply it to the things that matter to us. And we believe that by doing that, we will accomplish more than what we can imagine. Right. And
well,
so,
success and failure, it's dependent on each person's interpretation of it. Like a success for me was I got out of bed, I ate breakfast, I had a shower, no pain.
yeah,
Life's great.
yeah,
That's a success.
yeah. And my success is I've always focused on maintaining good habits. Right. And the last and most difficult habit to create was my self-doubt, was pleasing people because I'm afraid of being rejected. Like, to me, though, that's my biggest success, is my personal journey. Right. It's okay. I could tell people that, I've made millions of dollars, or my charitable nonprofit called Casco, I did it at Telfer, and recently it raised, like, we crossed almost 920. We're likely going to hit $1 million. So it's a student run organization that
Yeah.
puts on an entertaining show in a business dinner setting. And it's super amazing. I don't want to go too much in that, because I literally could talk for hours on that alone, because it's one of my favorite stories. Right.
Yeah.
But that stems from this one line, which is, we say, everything you love to do that helps time fly, we could do it and support a charity while doing it. So I love fashion, music, dance, business, dinner, food, dressing up, all that kind of stuff. So I want to do it in a setting where it would help a community, right? And so that would be my success on Casco, is not this big number that we've accomplished. It's, I created a space where people who are artistic in nature but love business and want to grow professionally
Right.
can have a space to be them, right? To shine their personalities. So, and I think most of my businesses have been that kind of business where, sure, it generates money, but I'm attracting some people where I create a space where they get to be them, right? And I get to be there with them, and we get to support each other. Like, that's why, like, I'm more of a, like, this woo woo kind of entrepreneur and a culture entrepreneur. All right. And it's not like about these like steps and how do you go from zero to market fit to like your series A, and B, and your exit, and all this stuff, right? Like, it's part of the journey, right? It's part of your personal journey.
Very, very wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about work-life balance, some lessons learned. What's next, Tuan? Like, if you could put your forward-thinking hat on,
Yeah.
where are you? Do you see yourself in next year and a few years from now?
Yeah. So I have so what I do is I create faceless channels. So I share content, I share lessons through faceless channels on purpose, so people don't know they're my channels.
Yeah.
Right. But what I see is my content is inspiring creativity and making a difference in people's lives, and that's going to drive a new lifestyle for me, where I can relocate if I want to, and things like that, right? And my focus would always be to help small businesses. I want to be there to make a difference to small businesses, and the rest is not already, like, everyone knows by this point that I just want to be healthy, happy, and being a good dad. So there's no difference in terms of where I want to be. Just consistently, what I do every day is shifting. So in a year from now, the habits that are consistent is I'm doing more creative things every day. I want to spend most of my time being creative. Instead of right now, I'm doing some marketing, some analytical work, and it's part of the job, and I accept it because I still end up doing what I love, right? But in a year from now, when you see me and if I jump on a call with you, I can tell you that I have not felt more creative than I have till today. And I want to continue this process, right? So it's not a clear, defined what I'm working towards. It's I know what I want to grow into, and it's just more and more creativity, more
Well, it's a
fun.
process.
Yeah,
Being happy in your work, family, health, all of this stuff is interrelated.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm gonna be hitting you with similar questions when we do a reverse interview.
Oh, fantastic. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
So, Tuan, we're wrapping up our time right now. Do you have any closing words of wisdom for the small businesses listening in today, please?
Yeah, uh, in business, what I think is most people won't see what you see. And so don't let that deter you from pursuing what you see in your head. So pursue forward and stay connected to the very being who you are, and live your truth. That's it. So much love and good luck.
Live your truth. That's great. Tuan, how can somebody get in contact with you, please?
You can hit me up on LinkedIn. So, Tuan Nguyen on LinkedIn, but I think it's actually T.Nguyen on LinkedIn. That's how you find me. Facebook as well, Tuan Nguyen. And if you want to send an email, it's going to be through my assistant. So it's Tony@healthgenie.ca. And she's my gatekeeper. She basically filters, knows my agenda, and we fit you into the schedule to connect.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We were joined today by Tuan Nguyen for sharing some entrepreneur wisdom on Talk to the Fedora.
Thank
We
you so
hope that this
much.
segment has provided some wisdom that you can use to grow your small business. So please subscribe and check out the hundreds of other YouTube videos on some great entrepreneurial content. Tuan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Have a great day, everyone.